Hey guys, this is activity 8.2 on page 50, and this is where we're going to talk about list tables and trees. There's three different ways that we can list sample space when we look at the likelihood of something happening, or the looking at the possible outcomes in that situation. And you'll notice this looks a little different than your book. It's the same as your book, but it's just written down on paper instead of in the workbook. So you could either copy this down or you could just look in your book if you have your Unit 8 workbook. All right, so here we go. Consider the experiment. We're going to not only flip a coin, but then we're also going to roll a number cube. So we know if we're going to do both of those things, that this is definitely going to change our sample space or our possibilities for the outcome. So we have our three friends, Elena, Kieran, and Priya. They all use a different method for finding the sample space. And as we run through these, I mean, maybe think about what's the method that just makes the most sense to you, something that you feel pretty comfortable with, because these are all valid methods. So Elena decides to write everything out. So she writes heads 1, heads 2. When I say, so like flipping a head and then also rolling a 1 on the number cube, because those are the two things that are happening in this chance event. Heads 2, heads 3, heads 4, heads 5, heads 6. She could flip a tails and get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so she just carefully wrote out every single possible outcome in her for her sample space. Kieran does this a little differently. She decides to make a table. And so Kieran, put down all the possibilities. She might, label this number cube outcomes. That's right, number cube. And then this would be, flipping the coin. Flip coin. And so those are the two labels there. So you could get a heads and a 1, a heads and a 2, kind of similar to what Elena wrote out up here. And then tails 1 all the way through tails 6. So those are the possible outcomes there. That would be our sample space. And then Priya decides to make, call a tree diagram. Okay, so looking at this situation, using that tree diagram, which I know we've used in math before with just different things with factors and prime numbers and things. So here's a possibility. You could flip ahead, and then what could you do after that? You could also roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, right? And looking at this situation, a tails, and then the same idea there, right? And you'll notice if you flip this, like if you were to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you were to put heads and tails, you would get the same thing, right? You would get the same number of outcomes. How many outcomes are here in all three of these methods? How many possibilities are there? How many combinations? You notice there's 12, right? So notice how this first one has 2 outcomes, right? The sample space would be 2, flipping a coin, and then the second one is 6. Right, same idea here, 2 and 6. Right, this one's just kind of written out, but 2 multiplied by 6 is 12. That's no coincidence there, but that has that number of outcomes. Right, see that multiplication. All right, so I guess you kind of choose what method works best for you. And I think question 2 says, which one do you prefer? Okay, which one do you prefer? I mean, I know for me personally, I kind of prefer the tree one, the tree diagram method, just because it's just faster for me to write down. And sometimes making a table can be a little bit cumbersome, and knowing what to label, and it just takes a little bit longer. And then Elena's method definitely could work. It's just writing every single thing out can sometimes take a little bit more time. Okay, so I guess you choose what method works best for you. There are a few questions after this that weren't required, but if you wanted to try them, I think it's questions 3 through 5 or 3 through 6. There's some different situations where you have to list the sample space and the outcomes, and you could try those questions and maybe use one of these methods that works best for you. You can also check out the lesson summary in this section. That helps too. All right, thanks guys for taking a look at the video.